Then he sauntered over to inspect Barenziah, who was once again able to move, although her head throbbed maddeningly when she tried to. Open your shirt, Barenziah, the elf said. Barenziah gawked at him and clutched it closed. You're a girl, aren't you, Berry? He said softly. You should have stopped dressing as a boy months ago, you know. You were only drawing attention to yourself. And calling yourself Berry. Is your friend Straw too stupid to remember anything else? It's a common elven name, Barentia defended. The man shook his head sadly. Not among dark elves, it isn't, my dear. But you wouldn't know much about dark elves, would you? I regret that, but no matter. I shall try to remedy it. Who are you? Berenzia demanded. Hey, so much for fame. The man shrugged, smiling wryly. I am Symmachus, my lady Berenzia, General Symmachus, of his awesome and terrible majesty Tiber Septim the First's imperial army. And I must say it's a merry chase you led me throughout Tamriel, or this part of it anyway. Although I guessed, and guessed correctly, that you'd head for Morrowind eventually. You had a bit of luck. A body was found in Whiterun that was thought to be Straw's, so we stopped looking for the pair of you. That was careless of me, yet I'd not have thought you'd have stayed together this long. Where is he? Is he all right? She asked in genuine trepidation. Oh, he's fine for now. In custody, of course. He turned away. You care for him, then? He said, and then suddenly stared at her with fierce curiosity out of red eyes that seemed strange to her, except in her own seldom seen reflection. He's my friend, Berenzia said. The words came out in a tone that sounded dull and hopeless to her own ears. Symmachus, a general in the imperial army, no less, said to have friendship and ears of Tiber Septim himself. Eh, you seem to have several unsuitable friends, if you'll forgive my saying so, my lady. Stop calling me that. She was irritated at the general's seeming sarcasm, but he only smiled. As they talked, the bustle and flurry in the house died away, although she could still hear people, presumably the residents, whispering together not far off. The tall elf perched himself on a corner of the desk. He seemed quite relaxed and prepared to stay a while. Then it occurred to her. Several unsuitable friends, had he said. This man knew all about her, or seemed to know enough anyway, which amounted to the same thing. What's going to happen to them? To me? Ah, as you know, this house belongs to the commander of the imperial troops in this area, which means to say that it belongs to me. Berenzia gasped, and Symmachus looked up sharply. What? You didn't know? Tsk, tsk, tsk. Why, you are rash, my lady, even for 17. You must always know what it is you do, or get yourself into. But the guild wouldn't have. Barenziah was trembling. The Thieves Guild would never have attempted a mission that crossed imperial policy. No one dared oppose Tiber Septim, at least no one she knew of. Someone at the guild had bungled badly, and now she was going to pay for it. I dare say it's unlikely that Theris had guild approval for this. In fact, I wonder. Symmachus examined the desk carefully, pulling out drawers. He selected one, placed it on top of the desk, and removed a false bottom. There was a folded sheet of parchment inside. It seemed to be a map of some sort. Barenziah edged closer. Symmachus laughed. He held it away from her. Rash indeed. He glanced it over, then folded it and replaced it. You advised me a moment ago to seek after knowledge. So I did. Suddenly he seemed to be in high good humor. We must be going, my dear lady. He shepherded her to the door, down the stairs, and out into the night air. No one was about. Barenzia's eyes darted toward the shadows. She wondered if she could outrun him or elude him somehow. You're not thinking of attempting to escape, are you? Don't you want to hear first what my plans are for you? She thought that he sounded a bit hurt. Now that you mention it, yes. Perhaps you'd rather hear about your friends first. No. He looked gratified at this. It was evidently the answer he wanted, thought Barenziah, but it was also the truth. While she was concerned for her friends, especially Straw, she was far more concerned for herself. You will take your place as the rightful queen of Mournhold. Symmachus explained that this had been his and Tiber Septim's plan for her all along, that Mournhold, which had been under military rule for the dozens or so years since she had been away, was gradually to be returned to civilian government, under the emperor's guidance, of course, and as part of the imperial province of Morrowind. But why was I sent to Darkmoor? Barenziah asked, hardly believing anything she had just been told. For safekeeping, naturally. Why did you run away? Barenziah shrugged. I saw no reason to stay. I should have been told. You would have been by now. I had in fact sent for you to be removed to the imperial city to spend some time as part of the emperor's household. But of course you had, shall we say, absconded by then. As for your destiny, it should be and should have been quite obvious to you. Tiber Septim does not keep those he has no use for, and what else could you be that would be of use to him? I know nothing of him, nor for that matter of you. Then know this. Tiber Septim rewards friends and foes alike according to their deserts. Barenziah chewed on that for a few moments. Straw has deserved well of me, and has never done anyone any harm. He is not a member of the Thieves' Guild. He came along to protect me. He earns our keep by running errands, and he... Symmachus waved her impatiently to silence. I know all about Straw, he said, and about Theris. He stared at her intently. So, what would you? She took a deep breath. Straw wants a little farm. If I'm to be rich, then I would like for one to be given to him. Very well. He seemed astonished at this, and then pleased. Done. He shall have it. And Theris? He betrayed me, Barenziah said coldly. Theris should have told her what risk the job entailed. Besides, he'd pushed her right into their enemy's arms in an attempt to save himself. Not a man to be rewarded. Not, in fact, a man to be trusted. Yes, and? Well, he should be made to suffer for it, shouldn't he? That seems reasonable. What form should said suffering take? Berenzia balled her hands into fists. She would have liked to beat and claw at the Khajiit herself, but considering the turn of events, that didn't seem very queenly. A whipping. Would 20 stripes be too many, do you think? I don't want to do him any permanent injury, you understand. Just teach him a lesson. Hey, of course. Symmachus grinned at this. Then his features suddenly set and became serious. It shall be done, your highness, my lady Queen Berenzia of Mournhold. Then he bowed to her in sweeping, courtly, ridiculously, wonderfully beautiful bow. Berenzia's heart leapt. She spent 2 days at Sir Marcus's apartment, during which she kept very busy. There was a dark elven woman named Drelian who saw to her needs, although she did not exactly seem a servant since she took her meals with them, nor did she seem to be Symmachus's wife or lover. Drilian looked amused when Berenzia asked her about it. She simply said she was in the general's employ and did what was asked of her. With Drilian's assistance, several fine gowns and pairs of shoes were ordered for her, plus a riding habit and boots, along with other small necessities. Berenzia was given a room all to herself. Symmachus was out a great deal. She saw him at most meal times, but he said little about himself or what he had been doing. He was cordial and polite, quite willing to converse on most subjects, and seemed interested in anything she had to say. Drelian was much the same. Berenzia found them pleasant enough, but hard to get to know. As Katisha would have put it, she felt an odd twinge of disappointment. These were the first dark elves with whom she'd associated closely. She had expected to feel comfortable with them, to feel at last that she belonged somewhere, with somebody, as part of something. Instead, she found herself yearning for her Nordic friends, Katisha and Straw. When Symmachus told her they were set out for the imperial city on the morrow, she asked if she could say goodbye to them. Katisha? He asked. Aye, but then I suppose I owe her something. She it was who led me to you by telling me of a lonely, dark elven girl named Berry who needed elven friends, and who sometimes dressed as a boy. She had no association with the Thieves Guild, apparently, and no one associated with the Thieves Guild seems to know your true identity, save Theris. That is well. I prefer that your former guild membership not be made public knowledge. Please speak of it to no one, your highness. Such a past does not become an imperial queen. No one knows but Straw and Theris, and they won't tell anyone. No. He smiled a curious little smile. No, they won't. He didn't know that Katisha knew then, but still, there was something about the way he said it. Straw came to their apartment on the morning of their departure. They were left alone in the salon. Although Berenzia knew that other elves were within earshot, he looked drawn and pale. They hugged one another silently for a few minutes. Straw's shoulders were shaking, and tears were rolling down his cheeks, but he said nothing. Berenzia tried to smile. So we both get what we want, eh? I'm to be Queen of Mournhold, and you'll be lord of your own farmstead. She took his hand, smiled at him warmly, genuinely. I'll write you, Straw, I promise. You must find a scribe so you can write me too. Straw shook his head sadly. When Berenzia persisted, he opened his mouth and pointed at it, making inarticulate noises. Then she realized what it was. His tongue was gone, had been cut off. Barenziah collapsed onto a chair and wept noisily. But why? She demanded of Symmachus when straw had been ushered away. Why? Symmachus shrugged. He knows too much. He could be dangerous. At least he's alive and he won't need his tongue to raise pigs or whatever. I hate you! Barenziah screamed at him, then abruptly doubled over and vomited on the floor. She continued to revile him between intermittent bouts of nausea. He listened stolidly for some time while Julian cleaned up after her. Finally, he told her to cease or he would gag her for her journey to the emperor. They stopped at Katisha's house on their way out the city. Symmachus and Julian didn't dismount. All seemed normal, but Barenziah was frightened as she knocked on the door. Katisha answered the knock. Barenziah thanked the gods silently that at least she was all right, but she'd also obviously been weeping. In any case, she embraced Barenziah warmly. Why are you crying? Barenziah asked. For Tharis, of course. You haven't heard? Oh, dear, poor Tharis. He's dead. He's dead. Barenziah felt icy fingers creeping around her heart. He, he was caught stealing from the commandment house. Poor fellow. But that was so foolish of him. Oh, Barry, he was drawn and quartered this very dawn by the commandment's order. Oh, oh. She started to sob. I went. He asked for me. It was terrible. He suffered so before he died. I'll never forget. I looked for you and Straw, but no one knew where you'd both gone to. She glanced behind Barenziah. That's the commandment, isn't it, Symmachus? Then Katisha did a strange thing. She stopped crying and grinned. You know, the moment I saw him, I thought, this is the one for Barenziah. Katisha took a fold of her apron and wiped it across her eyes. I told him about you, you know. Yes, Barenziah said. I know. She took Katisha's hands in each of hers and looked at her earnestly. Katisha, I love you. I'm going to miss you so, so much. But please, don't ever tell anyone else anything about me. Ever. Swear you won't. Especially not to Symmachus. And look after Straw for me. Promise me that. Katisha promised, puzzled though willing. Barry, it wasn't somehow. Barry, it wasn't somehow because of me that Tharis was caught, was it? I never said anything about Tharis to him. She glanced over at the general. Barenziah assured her that it wasn't that. An informant had told the Imperial Guard of Tharis's plans, which was probably a lie, but she could see that Katisha plainly needed some kind of comfort. Oh, I'm so glad of that. If I can be glad of anything just now, I'd hate to think. But how could I have known? She leaned over and whispered in Barenziah's ear. Symmachus is very handsome, don't you think? and so charming. I wouldn't know about that, Barinzia said dryly. I haven't really thought about it. There have been other things to think about. She explained hurriedly about being Queen of Mournhold and going to live in the Imperial City for a while. He was looking for me, that's all. On orders from the Emperor, I was the object of a quest, nothing more than some sort of a goal. I don't think he thinks of me as a woman at all. He said I didn't look like a boy, though. She added in the face of Katisha's incredulity. Katisha knew that Berenzia evaluated every male that she met in terms of sexual desirability and availability. I suppose it's the shock of finding out that I really am a queen, she added. And Katisha agreed that yes, that's true. That must have been something of a shock, although one there was no likelihood of her experiencing firsthand. She smiled. Berenzia smiled with her. Then they hugged again, tearfully for the last time. She never saw Katisha again, or Straw. The royal party left Riften by the great southern gate. Once through, Symmachus tapped her shoulder and pointed back at the portals. I thought you might want to say goodbye to Theris too, Your Highness, he said. Berenzia stared briefly but steadily at the head impaled on the spike above the gate. The birds had been added, but the face was still recognizable. I don't think he'll hear me, although I'm quite sure he'll be pleased to know I'm fine, she said, seeming to sound light. Let's be on our way, General, shall we? Symmachus was clearly disappointed by her lack of reaction. Ay, you heard of this from your friend Katisha, I suppose. You suppose correctly. She attended the execution, Berenzia said casually. If he didn't know already, he'll find out soon enough. She was sure of that. Did she know Theris belonged to the guild? She shrugged. Everyone knew that. It's only lower ranking members like me who are supposed to keep their membership secret. The ones higher up are well known. She turned to smile archly at him. But you must know all of that, shouldn't you, General? She said sweetly. He seemed unaffected by this. So you told her who you were and whence you came, but not about the guild? The guild membership was not my secret to tell. The other was. There's a difference. Besides, Katisha is a very honest woman. Had I told her, it would have lessened me in her eyes. She was always after Theris to take up a more honest line of work. I value her good opinion. She afforded him a glacial stare. Not that it's any concern of yours, but do know what else she thought? She also thought I'd be happier if I settled down with just one man. One of my own race. One of my own race with all the right qualities. One of my own race with all the right qualities who knows to say all the right things. You, in fact. She grabbed the reins, preparatory to assuming a brisker pace, but not without sinking one final irresistible barb. Isn't it odd how wishes come true sometimes, but not in the way you want them to? Or maybe I should say, not in the way you would ever want them to. His answer so took her by surprise that she quite forgot about cantering off. Yes, very odd, he replied, and his tone matched his words exactly. Then he excused himself and fell behind. She held her head high and urged her mount onward, trying to look unimpressed. Now, what was it about his response that bothered her? Not what he said. No, that wasn't it. But something about the way he said it. Something about it made her think that she, Barenziah, was one of his wishes that had come true. Unlikely as this seemed, she gave it due deliberation. He had found her at last, after months of searching, it seemed, under pressure from the Emperor, no doubt. So his wish had come true. Yes, that must be it. But in a way, apparently, not altogether to his liking. The end. Please like, share, and subscribe.